Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking about extreme crisis leadership with Rob Currie. Rob, great first and second segments there. Now I've got a couple of questions for you with regards to crisis management
Sure.
and leadership. How do you choose who should be on a crisis management team?
I get this question all the time when we start working, building up new programs for clients, and that basically you want representation from each of your functional areas. So I'll just back up for a moment. Often there's organizations that we work with, and they say, well, the crisis leader would be actually, we'll get to the leader in a moment, but it should be the CEO. And so, well, just a second, let's back up. We start them with there should be someone from each functional unit. So if we were to look at a retail bank, where there would be someone in charge of banking operations, there would be IT, HR, your standard sections. If I was making running shoes, I'd probably have somebody from manufacturing. So basically, I get folks to take their org chart out and we come down about 2 layers from the executive and start to look where it starts to fan out into functional areas. That's who should be trained for crisis management because on the day we might not know what it is. Is it a labor issue where obviously it's got a heavy HR, potentially legal implication if you're about to sever a bunch of employees, there's negative reaction, a strike action, and that's your crisis of the day. So you want representation from all different areas. The next question I get is, well, Rob, who should the crisis leader, and that's language we
Hmm.
specifically use. And I mentioned being an incident commander, that's more Canadian policing language, but the role is very much the same. Who is in charge of the crisis management team and empowered to make certain decisions, not all for the organization, but specifically how to guide the organization from a decayed state of normal operations, because that's the definition of crisis. You've gone to this decayed state, and you need to get them back to normal operations. For that to happen, I have a couple different pieces. You need folks that can think strategically, that do not get wedded to their day-to-day job. And you're like, but you just said you should have experts there. If I'm the crisis leader, but my day-to-day job is the CISO, I'll just take that. I'm in charge of IT security. Okay. I can't be making IT security decisions for the 2 hours, 2 days, however long we're in crisis mode, and do my job as the crisis leader. And specifically, if it's something like ransomware, the last thing I want to do is dive down the rabbit hole and be trying to help my team fix the issue. The people outside the crisis, I've never seen a crisis fixed inside a crisis management team, just FYI. It's usually the people that are outside receiving direction and executing plans outside of that room.
Hmm.
So you have to have someone that can detach themselves and put their crisis leader hat on, okay? And stay focused at the strategic level. And what do I mean? Don't dive into the weeds. Think if we're about to make a decision, like a press release about a positioning on, let's say we have a factory that makes running shoes and we're about to be hit by a hurricane. We make a release that we're about to shut down operations in the area that's affected. The crisis leader should be thinking ahead. Well, what will employees say? Will they be worried about this? Will they be worried about that? How will the public react? How will our partners and suppliers react? Those are the types of things. And when they get too close to diving in, when we get into training, we tell them to take a helicopter view, pull back on the stick, come up nice and high, and let the functional areas come up with the issues. And your job is to make sure that those things are being shared and the best decisions are being made. And ultimately, you're accountable. So to come back to who's the best person, you won't know until you start training people.
Hmm.
One common error, I'll say pitfall, because it's not an error, it's not usually ill-intentioned. They'll go, well, Alex has been with the company 17 years, the most senior guy here. Alex will be the leader. And you're like, Rob, that's not my cup of tea. I'm more a B type personality. I like to keep things quiet. I'm very good at what I do here. And there's nothing wrong with that. But organizations tend to take the most tenured person or highest rank person, if you will, and put them in charge. They may be the right person, but you're not going to know until you give them realistic scenarios and see how they perform under pressure. Some of us thrive under pressure. Some of us can be trained to thrive and do well under pressure. And there's some of us that I'm not comfortable making decisions unless I have all of the information. And that's okay. It doesn't make you a good person or bad person. When I was a young police officer, I wanted to be an undercover officer, and they said, Rob, it's written cop all over your face. And that was where all the cool cops were. Like, I thought that was the coolest thing. And they said, don't take offense, buddy. You're still a good police officer. And I share that example with what it's okay if you're not the leader, right? The other thing with your crisis management team is, especially when they start to get good at their craft, well, where Alex represents HR, he's always here. Okay, but do we not give Alex some leave? He's been here 17. No, he has 4 weeks leave and he loves to travel. Well, we better have a number two from HR, not just Alex on the crisis management team.
Mm,
And that's the other thing, is having some bench strength and not being victim, because Murphy or the enemy,
mm.
they get that vote and they will vote that day, and they'll vote not the way you think. And that, so the day that we need an HR expert around the table and we've only trained Alex, he's in Thailand doing scuba diving.
Yeah.
We can't call him, and he certainly probably doesn't want that phone call.
Yep.
So that's the other one, is to make sure that you've got depth and feel. And again, this is where it gets into, well, Nancy's only been with our company for 2 months. Okay, that's fine. Nancy was hired because she's competent, and we need to, make sure that she feels comfortable filling in for, and she's fully empowered. She's not trying to call you in Thailand on a decision from the HR department that needs to be made. She goes to sit at that table. And I think that's the other key thing. Your people around the table can speak authoritatively to their area. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, they need to have enough experience to speak authoritatively to their area, or at least be able to reach back and go, I don't have the answer. Let me call my HR team or IT team or whatever sub team is supporting that decision making. No.
With regards to the training, how do you train leadership? Because they have the power to delegate. And I'm sure you've been in situations, as many of us have, they delegate somebody else to come up, and it's not someone you've ever dealt with before. So they
Yeah.
don't have the understanding of why they're going through this crisis, exercise or simulation or cyber exercise, whatever. They're just there for a bum in a seat
I,
because the
I had
CEO.
that happen in a scenario. We gave the leader a very difficult task, and the default right away was, Rob, I'm a delegator. So I empower Alex. And I said, that's fine. I'm good. So Alex can make all this in him. Are you 100% comfortable with any decision Alex make? Wow. I said, because you can delegate what? Authority or responsibility?
Mm,
Exactly. You are ultimately responsible and accountable for the decisions of the crisis management team. So we have a couple scenarios we do specifically for that. And it's not to embarrass anyone, it's to get that person that's in that leadership chair and go, you, Steve or Nancy, you own this. Well, Alex said, fine, ask Alex what to do. And he's going to give you his best advice, but it's not his decision, it's yours. Well,
right.
he says we should, I hear you, that that's your decision in your account. Because if I'm the CEO or the head of the board, I'm calling in there and I'm not looking for Alex. I want the crisis management leader, and I want that one throat who is giving me that information. And for them to say, especially when things happen that don't go as well as planned, crisis resolution, it's pretty rare. We come up with this wonderful decision. Ah, the sun shines again. There's bumps in the road because it's not business as usual. If it was, we wouldn't be in crisis mode. And that,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
how do you deal with these bumps in the road? And that's another key tenet of the leader is, yes, I hear what you're saying to senior leadership. And I, this is my team. We made a mistake, or I made the mistake here, but they own it and they turn around with the team and there's no blame. First off, there's no time. We'll deal with the blame and how we remediate in the after action, but certainly not during the crisis. And
Yeah.
so that's a key thing we train for. And so we introduce failure purposefully. And what we're looking for is the leader's reaction to it and the team's reaction as well. And we do it two ways. We inject that as something that's happened from one of the team players and the leader themselves, just to see how they manage that.
Mm,
So the good news, Alex, is most get there. I get people saying, Rob, I could never be the crisis leader. I'm just a quiet person. I do my own thing. And actually, some of them turn out to be fantastic. They can filter out the noise. They can get to that 30,000 feet, and they do fine. They just might not be the biggest A-type personality in the
right.
room. Because I'm asked too, what's the best leader for crisis? And the answer is it depends. Just for my team or my business partner, depending on the type of issue that the client's having, he may be better suited to help the client out. Just natural style. It's just going to fit better for him. Can I adapt? Absolutely, but it's more comfortable for him to deal with certain, and it's more comfortable for me to deal. Organizations are going to be the same in the depending on the type of crisis.
We've got 5 minutes left, but I do want to ask you this one question. Quite often, leadership are getting one test of some sort, tabletop or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
and the doers on the tactical level get a different, separate test. They never seem to test together. How do you go about doing that so that the communication flows properly, the decisions are flowing, the information that's needed to make decisions is flowing properly? How do you bring these two together?
It has to be the same scenario and it has to be, to use your language, the same test, Alex. I actually don't think that that works because on game day, you go, oh, well, actually, we don't do that. No one's going to care on game day.
Yeah.
There's one team and it's the organization. And I think that's the key piece in crisis. If we don't get this right, it could affect the strategic viability of the company, right? By
Oh
that
yeah.
poor decision by Blockbuster, and there's no more Blockbuster. The same thing could happen with a running shoe company if you don't evacuate your factory and you get your employees killed because you want to keep manufacturing and there's this category 5 on the way. So the test has to be the same. I've occasionally seen this when, and there's nothing wrong with organizations that have a mature crisis management program to do their own testing and exercising. You know, as a consultant, people say, well, you should always have a consultant doing it. It sounds a bit self-serving. That said, you should have somebody external invited at least to your after action to give you frank feedback about how your organization is performing, and that you're at a stage where you're like, well, actually, that's for context, or actually, we do need to address that. So mature organizations can get there. I occasionally see this dual testing that you're talking about when it's done internally, and the after action has to be all positive
Mm.
and we're all successful. And we certainly don't want to embarrass our senior leadership. And
Yeah,
that,
I was in a test a while ago on that last point you just made quite a few years ago, and the director and VP in finance were saying, "Oh, this big simulation a test that we just did, it was a failure because you found issues in IT and somewhere one of the business continuity plans, so it's a failure." And meanwhile, the VP of IT is going, "Are you kidding?" He goes, "I'm thrilled. I'm so happy we found these
yeah,
gaps while we're testing. Nothing was impacted. Our customers are fine, and we just found a really big unknown gap." He goes,
that's a high
"I'm
performer.
I'm happy." He
That's
goes,
a high
"I'm glad we
performer.
found it." And he goes, If it was a pass or fail, they pass with flying colors. We've got a path forward." So it really depends on, I guess, the outlook, like
I,
you said there, and everyone was involved that way.
yeah. High performance organizations are obsessed with failure, but it's how they react. And I love your context there. This person go, this is it's a gift. Now, if you keep
Yeah.
making the same mistakes, that's on you. But they happen and it's not game day. Oh my goodness. Now we have time to fix them. We've got time to apply for budgets and that you
Yeah.
just received a gift. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah. And it
so
was too. Got a lot of things changed and updated afterwards. So it was great. So we've got 2 minutes left, Rob. Any final thoughts on extreme crisis leadership?
no, Alex, I was just go back to resume if you are trying to change culture in your organization, if you are trying to prepare for the worst days for your organization, we're hearing more and more of our chaotic world and it not getting easier. The I think the one thing is the going back to my time equals home. The earlier you invest in educating, trying to make that culture change and being ready for that day, it will pay dividends in like well past what you invested. I look at the organizations that don't and they go, we just lost $14 million. And then they look back and go, we had two consultants that were going to do this for a fraction of that and get us ready, get us trained. And that, so it's the investment early. I've always seen it save organizations down the road, having faster, quicker, more adequate response. So invest early, I guess, is my and be honest with yourself about how things went. Hold that mirror up, and if you can't say, "Hey, Rob Currie, you could have done better," then ask your buddy Alex, how am I doing here?" "Well, it's good, Rob, but I would have changed this," and I'm ready to hear that lesson. So be open to the feedback, and if you surround yourself by people that can provide that to you, that's
And
be
on
my
that
last
note,
tip.
that's great. And on that note, we've come to the end of the show. Rob, thank you so much for sharing your time and insights with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here. It was an honor, Alex.
My pleasure. Thank you, and everyone watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody.